to tell you what one of the leaders of the Muslim organization called Muslim Public Affairs Council told me 8 years ago. Imagine 8 years ago, and you'll know where the anti-Semitism is coming from. When I was going to meet with a Jewish leader, I stood up against Irvine 11, those kids that had gone berserk, and Ambassador Oren wanted to meet me. This leader came to me, he's an Arab, Salam al-Maryati, and he said, "Oh sister, don't go to the Jewish people, they can't be our friends, and you can't trust them, they'll use your pictures." I thought about my father who had built Pakistan and my grandmother, and they, when I moved here, told me, Muslims thrive with Jews. We are people of the book. When we live with them and we work with them, communities thrive. And I knew that that could not be the teaching of Islam, and that these people have a separate agenda. So all this going on about anti-Semitism, is anti-Israel, is not anti-Semitism? Let me tell you it is. Because Salam al-Maryati told me that, you know what, Israel is evil. They are killing the Palestinians 10, 15 years ago. And I said, no, I can't work with men like that. Anyway, these men don't even think that we are a human being. They tell us we should sit in the kitchen, we can't have a seat at the table, that we don't have a brain. I'm not going to work with them. We founded American Muslim Women. And the other civil rights leader that we all have in California, let me tell you about that gentleman, because he has harassed, discriminated, abused, almost killed one of my sisters that I've been supporting for the past 5 years. Laurie Saroya. Please Google her. Look at the stories of women and know what happened to them. This civil rights leader allegedly asked her for a sexual favor, and his name is Nihad Awad. Who is he? He's the head of care in America. For God's sake. We want these men to be held accountable. We want to stop the funding of MSAs. I met with the Jewish organizations who are so worried about young Muslim students in medical colleges that are coming and telling them, we don't want to hear about your Holocaust because that offends us. Two imams that are our allies and went to March of Israel, March of Living with Us. 50 Muslims went to March of Living with Us. They stood at Auschwitz and they prayed. They are with you, and they are here to break this patriarchy with the Muslim sisters. But we need you guys to know what's happening.
Thank you so much. The impact that nobody seems to be talking about is something that I want to talk to you about, Carolyn. Dr. Hellman. You know, you have specialized in really looking into the impact of trauma, and especially you deal with survivors. But my question to you is, yes, what is the impact on the individual who's been traumatized and violated like that? But what is the impact on the family? And what is the impact on the community? And then, what is the impact on the entire world?
Thank you so much for making this happen. I mean, it's just incredible that we're having this conversation and that this film is getting airtime. I mean, we really owe you for that. I just want everyone to just, with me for a moment, just take a nice deep breath. Just breathe in and breathe out. And I know that's a hippy-dippy thing to do, but we've actually all experienced at least a minor trauma this evening, or tertiary trauma as we call it, because we have borne witness, not to the explicit images, but to the testimonies of what happened on October 7th. And I just want to lay out some stats. Working with survivors, this is a particularly egregious instance or series of acts of violence. Violence or rape as a tool of war started in the late Middle Ages when rape was considered a way to show your manhood. It was considered a common or normal part of the spoils of war, and since that time, literally millions of women have been raped, mostly women, some men. We had a commission after World War II documenting that, the rape of Nanjing, World War II, you name it, in Yugoslavia. As you noted, Heidi, it is happening right now. It is happening in Ukraine. It is happening in Haiti. And we're talking about organized, systemic use of rape as a tool of sexual violence, as a tool of war. And the rapes that happen on women on October 7th were a war against their body. And 96% of rape survivors will suffer post-traumatic stress disorder within the first 2 weeks. 51% will have lifelong post-traumatic stress disorder. So we actually do understand that the trauma that happens with rape. We understand it because we understand PTSD of veterans coming back from war. We understand the flashbacks, the sleeplessness. You're going to have issues sleeping tonight because of your tertiary trauma from bearing witness to this, right? Many of you are. We're talking about depression. We know that rates of depression for trauma for those who've experienced rape and sexual assault are 3 times what they are for folks who have not. We know that suicidal ideation and death by suicide is over 2 times more common for rape survivors. And so what is happening with these families right now is the survivor's identity has been shaken, the family's identity has been shaken, their community's identity has been shaken, mostly because of a myth that drives victim blaming. And that myth is, and this is why we, even though we know better, many of us do not believe survivors or want to blame them or hold them somehow accountable. What was she wearing? What was she doing? What was she, why was she out at night? We tell this story because to tell the truth, which is that we don't control these acts of criminal violence, right? And that the survivor is not at all responsible for a criminal, felonious act against her. If we tell that truth, then it means we can't control it. It means that our daughters are on college campuses where they face higher rates of rape and sexual assault than if they don't go to college. It means that we are not in control of this, and so what ends up happening is that a lot of survivors face victim blaming. I hope that none of these survivors do, but I will tell you right now, the struggle is literally to keep these rape survivors alive. The suicidal ideation and what happens for the next couple of years, it will take all of the family's resources to focus on that survivor. It will take community resources to focus on her. And what happens, and I want to just tie this back into so much of what's been said on the panel, if I may. What happens is that all of these symptoms of trauma are exacerbated when you face something that Jennifer Fried has called institutional betrayal. Meaning that the institutions that are supposed to support you and protect you, whether it's your political institutions or a college campus, when you come forward to report rape or sexual violence, or law enforcement. And I should just say, we live in a culture that normalizes this. 90%, the UN does a survey every year, 90% of people across the globe view women as less than men, subhuman. It is patriarchy, it is misogyny, right? And it means, the hatred of women means that we all, a percentage is actually 91%, it means we all hold that, right? Like, it's men and women alike who are holding up this idea that women are subhuman, which is driving this, right? What happened on October 7th was intersectional. It was the hatred of women, and it was the hatred of Jews. There's no way you could do that to a human body unless you first dehumanize that human body. And so that is what was happening there. And all of these symptoms are amplified when a survivor faces institutional betrayal, meaning the institutions that are supposed to support her do not. And what happened on that day is that the international feminist community and the local, the US feminist community absolutely failed survivors with their silence. And they failed survivors because we have something that has happened on what I call the illiberal left, which is the oppression Olympics, where the pain and suffering of certain identities matters more than the pain and suffering of others. And I can say this as a college professor. I care deeply about the pain and suffering of people of color. I also care deeply, as hopefully every decent human being in this audience cares about the pain and suffering of women and queer folks and people who face fat phobia and people who face anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We can hold these complexities, right? But what has unfortunately happened is, and we all know this, we don't say this out loud, we all know this, because we have defined this in racial terms in the hierarchy of what matters in the US left and even in the global left, we are not talking about this because we have ranked certain pain and suffering higher. And I to say it is intellectually dishonest to, let's just go through a quick list. It's intellectually dishonest to act like this started on October 7th when there's a 2,000-year history of Jewish persecution. It is intellectually dishonest to classify Jewish people as settler colonialists or as white. It is simply to take a relatively recent phenomenon of the racial hierarchies in the United States that emerged about 400 years ago, and to take that and to put it on what is happening right now to understand what is happening in the. It is simply intellectually dishonest. It is intellectually dishonest to say that you care about the pain and suffering of people and not speak up about what happened on October 7th. It's also intellectually dishonest to not be as equally heartbroken for the children who are dying in Gaza when Hamas, and not being able to separate the people, right, from Hamas, the terrorist organization. It is intellectually dishonest to not have your heart break for those children, just the way my heart breaks for the women of October 7th. And I hope that we can all embrace some intellectual honesty.
Yes, thank you. I think empathy is so important. And again, it's the antidote to intolerance.